Welcome back to the 10th Justin and Tyler Movie Awards, and we are in the midst of our top 30 best movies of 2023, this being movies number 20 to number 11. I will kick things off once again, and I'm going to get us started right away with my number 20 best movie of 2023, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
My number 20 is Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got a
Sweet.
consensus.
All right. So I'm at the time that I saw the movie, I was super excited because it assuaged so many of my fears about, like, where's the MCU going? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, I was very concerned. And then I saw Kang the Conqueror, and I'm like, oh sweet, Kang's a badass. I feel perfectly fine. Now those problems, I guess, are kind of back. But I mean, like, it's not going to take away from my experience of seeing that movie and enjoying the fact that, like, the Scott Lang Ant-Man has, like, a story that's core to the MCU's overarching story, or what it was going to be anyway, rather than something that just felt like a side story, like Ant-Man just kind of bopping around while the real main stuff is happening. I know he certainly had elements of it there before, but for this one to have, like, you know, visiting the quantum realm and, like, having that big contribution to the overarching core story of the MCU, like, was just nice. It was just nice to see. And speaking of the quantum realm is incredible. Like, what a great locale, and I hope we get to explore it even more in what's coming in the future, whatever that future may be. So I think that's just about all that I really had to say. Felt like it was only, like, just right at the 2-hour mark, so it felt like it flew by. So that certainly helped. I'm interested to see more, certainly from a quantum realm perspective. So that's why it's my number 20, but you go right ahead.
Yeah, the quantum realm was interesting because it had a lot of cool things, such as flying weapon houses and that drinking that stuff so you can, like, talk the language or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just little neat things. I don't understand the reception on this, why people didn't like this more than they did. I don't know what people, like, I really don't know what people want from the MCU. The only criticism I can really see of this movie is that, like, Kang is great. John Majors is great. Here's the thing. He gets punked by, you know, Ant-Man and some superpowered ants and whatnot. And I've seen a lot of people say that Kang looks really weak. But this wasn't Kang at the peak of his powers. This was a diminished Kang. Also, they were superpowered ants. And there was a lot of them. And yes, I do get it to some extent. Oh, your big bad is beat by Ant-Man. I think that may have caused some damage to Kang's perception that they might not... I mean, now it doesn't matter, I don't think. But if they would have stayed on course, I don't know that they would have been able to correct it. Because I get that. I do get that criticism to some degree. But when you think about it, you can justify why he lost.
Right.
But it does kind of seem a little silly to lose to Ant-Man when you're supposed to be at an Avengers level / like galactic threat. But I don't really care. I know that there's so many Kang variants that were coming up and he wasn't even the strongest one. I get it. It's like they're not all going to be the greatest things ever.
Right.
But aside from that, just a really fun MCU movie. Good action, good visuals. I didn't notice anything. I don't think that, like, the CGI gets criticized a lot these days.
Yeah. I
don't think I saw anything too bad in this one. Maybe I underestimate the amount of superhero fatigue that there really is. I don't know. Because it didn't do that well.
I think that certainly plays a role.
Like, it's just bigger than I even thought it was. But I knew there were some. And I feel it somewhat. I feel it a little bit more than I would like, but I still get excited for superhero movies.
Yeah.
The AntMan action is always fun.
Yes.
And I always say this every time because of the big, small dynamic of AntMan as a character. I think that always leads to cool choreography.
Yeah, it allows them to do way more interesting things than they're able to do with a lot of the other characters, which is great.
Yeah, so while I may not love it as much as I thought I did when I first watched it, I do still really, 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 really like this movie.
But you know why people don't like it? MODOK.
Oh, you know what? MODOK wasn't done real well. I forgot about MODOK.
No.
But Tank the movie? Bad? No. God, no. There's so much good about this. Yeah, MODOK could have been done a lot
Everybody forgets about MODOK.
That's true.
So, since we had a consensus, I will fire again with my number 19 best movie of 2023. I'll be shocked if we get a second straight consensus, but stranger things have happened, I suppose. My number 19 is A Haunting in Venice. And no, fair enough. The third Kenneth Branagh-fueled Hercule Poirot movie based on books by Agatha Christie. This one, the Hercule Poirot is kind of retired and out of the limelight, but he gets pulled back in by a former friend of his, a crime novelist, played by Tina Fey, who I mentioned earlier in the awards. And he's attending a seance, basically, trying to disprove a medium. And what I was really taken by with A Haunting in Venice, that I mentioned before, was the significant step forward in like production value and directing, all coming from Kenneth Branagh. Like, he's really, really stepped forward as a director, and you really got to see those like moments of like inspired visual flair in a movie like this, where there's tension and there's things going on that you can't explain, and he just makes such great use of like camera angles in this big old house, and what was that noise, and what was and whatever, and he just does a lot of stuff that was not there in the first offering of these films, and a really standout performance, and I gotta give it up to Jamie Dornan. Because he had a really, really good performance in this movie, and you don't expect every day or every time that Jamie Dornan is on screen, because he's got the, I don't want to call it the stink, but he's got the legacy, the same as Dakota Johnson, of the 50 Shades of Grey movies, right?
Only he's crawling out of it slower. But I do think he's now crawling out of it.
He is.
But he wasn't for me at all.
Right.
Until maybe this movie, actually.
Yeah, it could very well be. But he's starting to, like, now when I see Jamie Dornan's name on a marquee, I'm like, I'm more interested in seeing this than I was before.
But the other thing was, Dakota Johnson was also never the problem of 50 Shades. Because I remember me and you talking about that movie and saying she is not the problem at all. She's great.
Right.
And he, not so much.
He's given a lot less material to work with. In 50 Shades anyway. But he's given really good material to work with here, and I thought he knocked it clean out of the park. I thought he was great. I mean, even though there's obviously a formula, like there's a formula to these movies because there's a formula to Agatha Christie novels, but this is one of those instances where the formula doesn't matter. Like, the formula produces an entertaining product at the end of it. And I really, really dug Haunting in Venice. It's my number 19 at an 8 out of 10.
I'm really glad you dug it so much. It's gotten some love, some serious love from you. I think it's a 0 out of 10 worst movie ever. No, I've literally rated this entire series 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
But I like this one more, even though it's technically rated the same. I do like this one more than the previous two, and I agree basically on all fronts. And the minor horror aspects added something to it for me.
Yeah.
Is this your favorite? Oh, no, you didn't see the second one.
I didn't see the second one. I like this one better than Murder on the Orient Express.
Yeah, it's trending upward.
I think it is.
I hope it stays on the scores, because they're just consistently entertaining to me. My number 19 is The Marvels.
Oh.
Don't be fooled by the placing of these superhero movies. Because, as I told Justin off camera, from 20 on are all bangers. Because I've seen so many movies, I'm rating them 8.5, 9 out of 10. Just from here on. So if I woke up, as you were, on a different side of the bed, this could be 12. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't understand what people want from the MCU at all. I'm so out of touch. And I understand there's some superhero bias. I get it.
It's starting to sound like a cry for help.
Yeah, like, please help me. No, don't, because I actually like these movies.
Right. No, because I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm happy you aren't. Here's the thing. The Marvels, or Captain Marvel, was a movie that was unfairly crapped on at its time.
I would agree.
But also benefited a lot from the, was it post-Infinity War? No, it was before Infinity War.
It was before.
The movie before Infinity War. And the female push. I know it benefited from some stuff that's not the quality of the movie. And I have some criticisms of that movie. Such as the character of Captain Marvel was just kind of bitter and not interesting. Didn't really have a personality. And guess what? In the Marvels, she does. She's more endearing, even though I didn't hate her before, and I certainly didn't hate Brie Larson as an actress. She said some wonky stuff. I don't care. I'm watching the movie, right? Miss Marvel, can't remember the actress's name. She's delightful. And I'm so happy for her because she cosplayed as Miss Marvel years ago, and now she is Miss Marvel. I'm pretty sure she's wrote like a comic or something for Miss Marvel. She's delightful in this movie. I'm not totally sold on Monica as a character, but she's fine. She's fine too. I love the dynamic of the powers.
Yeah.
I think that's
cool.
an interesting perspective on the fight scenes, and kind of made sense why it's like Captain Marvel didn't just 1v1 everything, or just 1v everything, just like, because Captain Marvel's so powerful that there's a lot of, like, it makes sense that she can't just go boom 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 boom, because she's like has to share time. It gimps her a little bit, right? It nerfs her, but it makes sense to the story, and it's a good way to get around the fact that Captain Marvel is arguably the most powerful person in the MCU, or a hero anyways, right? The villain's not great. I'm used to it.
Yeah,
doesn't excuse it, like
true.
I said earlier.
That's a genre problem, not
right.
a...
But the villain also isn't the worst villain I've ever seen either. Like, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 didn't have a good villain. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 is an amazing movie. One of the best. I don't care that much. And I've said this before, but it's not the Marvels versus insert villain.
Right.
Right? So I'm okay with it. It could be done better. I'm always welcoming a good villain. I'm not saying that. But it really didn't detract from my enjoyment much. I really appreciate their dedication to the cat bit.
Right.
Just a scene where they're trying to evacuate the planet, and they got those cats that eat the people, and everyone's wondering when will the cats eat them and stuff.
Yeah.
And then, like, Miss Marvel, there's that scene where it comes against one of the people running, and she's like, "I'm so sorry." I don't know what people want. And that's a serious, like, I don't understand.
The only thing I kind of want to contribute with the Marvels is, like, so I don't watch any of the 900 MCU TV shows, so I don't have the background with Kamala as a character. She kind of left me a little, like, disinterested almost.
Damn, that's sad.
Yeah, I wasn't really invested in her as a character, which is, I'm sure I would have been if I'd have watched this show.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to.
Right.
Well, man, I don't know.
It's a tough debate. Like,
I don't know.
I think you're both, like, I think you're right, but at the same time, it's like, it's either being right for the wrong reasons or wrong for the right reasons.
The movie should do enough to make you invested, but also it would be like watching.
It's to my benefit to watch.
Yeah, and you know that it's a series, and you should watch all the stuff to fully get the full experience. So I don't know. Right. I don't know how I feel about what I just said.
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, like, I just, your boy does not have the time to invest in those shows. My number 18, you'll find out why that's funny in a second. My number 18, best movie of 2023 is Wonka, starring Timothy Chalamet.
The big dad.
my boy Timothy Chalamet. And this is like... This movie was so delightful. And like I mentioned earlier, 2023 in film for me was very much I just want to have fun at the movies in 2023. And I don't think any movie exemplified that as much, probably, as this one. Musically inspired, was absolutely beautiful set pieces and costume design and everything. The songs were excellent. And like... It's the most archetypal characters you can possibly imagine telling a cookie-cutter story of baby's first capitalist corruption. But it does not matter. It does not matter one little bit. It's so much fun, and it's so endearing, and Timothée Chalamet encapsulates this early Gene Wilder version of Wonka so damn well. And everything about this comes together so well. I had such an enjoyable time watching this. Wonka's my number 18.
All right, so without looking to make sure, I think I rated this a 5 out of 10. Ooh. And here's a verbal essay of why you shouldn't trust my ratings. It's the reason I rated this a 5 out of 10 is nobody's fault but my own.
Oh,
it's I just don't care at all about the property, so I had a really hard time getting invested in it. Even though everything you said is completely true. I bet you it's a really fun movie. I gave Timothée Chalamet a nod, or an honorable mention, but it could have been in the top 3 for his performance. I think it's great. It is beautiful and colorful and even kind of funny once in a while. I just have so little interest that I'm watching it, and I just couldn't flip that switch to care. But I'm also not going to hate on it, so that's why I sat on a 5. I'm like, yeah, I don't really like this movie. I also don't hate this movie. It just is to me. My number 18 is Oppenheimer.
Okay.
The old Christopher Nolan. He's kind of reminds me of, he's like the Final Fantasy of directors. Always of the utmost quality, like, of mainline Final Fantasy.
Okay, sure.
Always utmost quality in production, and usually tries something different. Because Final Fantasy often changes, well, it always changes stuff about itself, pretty much, and it just reminds me of Final Fantasy, you know? Top of the line, like, AAA, right? I don't always like what he does. In fact, I've thought the last 3 movies were okay. This is a return for Nolan, which makes me really happy. Because I didn't really necessarily even want to see this movie that much. I just knew I would. Because it's Nolan. Of course I'm going to watch it. It's mostly a drama, but it feels like a thriller. It's amazing how 3 hours...
Yeah.
I think you might have said that, actually. Didn't you in a previous video? Maybe you mentioned
I think so.
Yeah. So it goes by. It has this cast that's just... It's so deep that you get this bit part... 2.5 hours in the movie. And, hey, I know that person. That's a deep, deep cast.
Yeah.
Right? And, yeah, Nolan's a great director because even if he fails, he tries stuff. He frames things differently. Things look different. Like a conventional director will just film in a very normal, conventional way, but Nolan's like, I'm going to maybe put the camera here instead of here, and I'm going to cut the audio here while he's breathing or whatever, and then when the explosion happens, everything just comes in. And he's made some terrible decisions in the past with dialogue, because he says he likes to get the first take because it's the more natural. He doesn't want to edit it in post. And I'm like, I understand, but also that kind of sucks sometimes. But I didn't mind it here. I didn't find the audio of the dialogue egregious in this movie, which was nice. Yeah, I'll just end it here because I really get the feeling Oppenheimer is coming up, and I probably should have predicted Oppenheimer for your number 1, but we'll see.
I'm glad that this was a return to form for Nolan for you, because that's been something that we've talked about multiple times on video, where it's just like, I think you've even expressed like, I think I gotta leave, or I think Nolan's leaving me behind, or I gotta leave Nolan behind. One of the two. That it's just like, it's not right. The level of quality is not where I expected or needed to be, and
I haven't loved a Nolan movie since Dark Knight Rises, I believe, because did he not do Dunkirk and Interstellar and Tenet?
My number 17 best movie of 2023 is Seline Song's Past Lives. And this was one of the latter movies that I saw this year. I think the second or third last movie that I saw this year. And I watched this one at home. I didn't get the opportunity to see it on the big screen. But, obviously a passion project for Seline Song. I think a lot of this, because I believe she was also the writer, and I think a lot of this is drawn from her personal life. So obviously a passion project to make this movie, and the pairing of Greta Lee and Teo Yu. I gave Greta Lee props in Best Actress. I didn't give anything to Teo Yu, but he's really, really good as well.
I mentioned him in
yes. Oh yeah, that's right. You did, absolutely.
When you were talking about her,
right?
I think I mentioned him.
And I think, especially when you're kind of at the middle part of the movie, I guess, when they're conversing over Skype.
Oh yeah.
I think this hits you a certain kind of way if you've been in long distance relationships.
Yeah, that's true.
Which both of us have. I think this hits you a certain way as oh God, I remember this. I remember how uncomfortable this is, and oh God, isn't it 2 a.m. there? And it's yeah, but this is when you whatever. It's oh God, I remember this. I remember this.
Yeah.
And so I think most of this movie hits you in a certain way, and I have to also give a shout out to John Magaro, who plays Nora Moon's husband, because not necessarily from a performance perspective, a little bit, but imagine being in that position.
Yeah.
Right? Imagine being in that position where you've been married to this person for years, and all of a sudden, a childhood friend comes back into the picture, and they're reconnecting for the first time in a dozen years, and she's basically spending whole days away. But imagine being in that position and trying to maintain any semblance of dignity.
Yeah.
Right? I think he actually did a fantastic job of portraying that, of somebody because there's moments where he's just his insecurities are showing, where it's just did you sometimes I can't help but feel maybe you only married me for a green card kind of thing, and she's no, that's not that's not it at all, and it's just imagining being in that spot and trying to maintain any semblance of personal dignity is crazy, and also sitting there knowing this may well have been my wife's soulmate. 8,000 Layers of Inyan. It's a Korean philosophy about how relationships form over 8,000 previous lives. That even passing each other on the street and having your arms brush or whatever is a layer of Inyan. So that was actually a really, really pretty concept. I was it's the first time I'd ever been introduced to it, and I was oh, I really love that. And there's those moments of he's your 8,000 layers of Inyan, and she's no, he's not. Or is this just another layer of their Inyan for a future life? Because even the way the movie ends is he looks at her and he's they're talking about who knows what might happen in a future life, and he's just I'll see you then. And it's oh my God, that's devastating.
I remember that.
It's such a pretty movie. There's a lot of reading involved in this because most of the movie's in Korean, but it is such a worthwhile investment of time. Really beautiful. I think Seline Song accomplished something very special with that, and that's why it's my number 17.
My number 17 is Rebel Moon. The Zack Snyder sci-fi flick that was also crapped on. That's what I mean by I'm defending sci-fi, and also Zack Snyder, which is the main point. I'm going to read some notes here. There are a few things that are true at once about this. One, this is much better than the critics think it is, as are most of Snyder's films. Mm-hmm. Two, it's a tad disappointing. I expect more from Snyder, even though I gave this an 8.5. And three, it's still great. I expected this to be amongst my favorite movies of the year, and it's really not.
Right.
And but I don't know. I don't know what the problem is here with this Seven Samurai inspired sci-fi flick of a group of rebels. I know it's very Star Wars because his idea was very Star Wars. It was going to be a Star Wars movie, but he didn't get to make a Star Wars movie. And I know there's going to be a part 2, and I know there's going to be a director's cut because he already announced that, which I hate. I hate that was announced before the movie came out. Well, then why are you giving me this one?
Right.
Like that I hate.
Just give me the director's cut.
Yeah, I really, because I know that'll be better. But anyway, but I do really like this one, and maybe with the director's cut, maybe I'll like this even more because he'll flesh out some of the characters. But I did think the characters were cool. I'm glad that the robot Jimmy, who had probably the best arc, but it was only in it near the beginning, showed up at the end because I know he's going to have a bigger part 2, which I'm really excited for. I don't know, man. If you hate Zack Snyder, which I know you don't, but if you hate Zack Snyder, you're going to hate this movie, because this movie's very Zack Snyder. There's slow-mo, and which was actually a little annoying at the beginning. It evened out a little bit as it went on, but at the beginning it was even starting to bother me, kind of in the same way 300 did.
Okay.
But then it petered out, and I was this is okay. Because there were sometimes you just didn't let the action breathe. It was like the second somebody moved, it was like boom, and I'm just like, come on, just let him run. But then he like... slow, he got rid of that a little bit. I mean, it's still Zack Snyder though. It's like it's a dark movie. It's beautifully shot. I don't care what anybody says. That guy shoots beautiful movies. And while Rebel Moon ended up not being quite as good as I had hoped, because I had it at maybe number 1 in most anticipated at the mid.
I think you might have, yeah.
Throw this in with movies like Batman vs Superman, although I like that movie a lot more, and Sucker Punch, because I'm defending this until the day I die.
Fair enough. So I didn't wind up seeing it.
That's sad.
I had intended to, and I also can't put the cap on my drink, so we'll just take that off camera. So I intended to, and I'll be perfectly honest, and this is totally on me, I allowed enough people's negative reviews to allow me to deprioritize seeing this. Because there was just other stuff that I wanted to see ahead of it, and it just kind of kept sliding down, and I didn't wind up seeing it by the end of the year. My number 16 best movie of 2023 is The Iron Claw.
Well, for you.
You think?
Well, for you, I think.
Yeah, like probably on the... I would have maybe thought that this might wind up like on the opposite side of... Like probably still in this grouping of 10, but on the like opposite side of the midpoint. Like it's like 13, 12, somewhere in there. Obviously the story of Kevin Von Erich and the Von Erich wrestling family in Texas in the 70s and the 80s. It just, to me, was like a couple points away from being, like, truly, truly special. A big part of that, honestly, was, like, the two kind of main points that I felt the movie really diverted from historical accuracy, and we've talked about this before. They made no point at all of clarifying that, like, when Fritz von Erich was wrestling in the 40s, he was a Nazi. He was wrestling as a Nazi character. And it's not that they had to say that, and I understand that that would have opened up its own can of worms and maybe would have mucked with the marketability of the movie. So I totally understand that, but they could have used, like, the whole crux of the Von Erich family, and this is represented really well in the movie, is that it's the Von Erichs against the world. You could have shown that getting instilled in the kids at a very young age by, like, I talked about, like, there's the scene in the parking lot where they, like, Fritz is like, I just bought this brand new car, even though they're living in a trailer. The new car is pulling the trailer that they live in.
Yeah.
But they have this nice fancy new car, and that would have been the point when you should have had somebody come up from behind with a tire iron and just put the tire iron through the window of the car. Because it's like, there's Fritz von Erich and there's that Nazi, and wham. Yeah. And it really would have helped solidify. Now look, I don't want children to go through trauma, but that really would have solidified, like, from a young age, well, it's the Von Erichs against the world. And also, they completely skip one of the brothers. Like, Chris Von Erich is not in the movie at all. Just some weird diversions from the true history. Yeah. That, like, And again, I only know a lot of this stuff because of like the Dark Side of the Ring episode on the Von Erichs and researching the Von Erich family, which I want to do because I'm a big fan of wrestling from that era. So there's just a couple of ways where I thought the movie just kind of fell a little bit short. And I feel like both of those things, both that being Chris and that fact about Fritz, belonged in the narrative and could have been used.
Right.
But it's like, for the most part, other than that, it's really well made. It's really made with care. It's a pretty faithful retelling of like the idea of the Von Erich curse. Other than that, it assuaged one of my fears going in that you knew, that I kind of thought they were going to make it all about Kevin's wife.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, I swear to God, if they make this movie about the Von Erichs, like all about like how does all this impact Kevin Von Erich's wife? I'm like, this is going to be the disappointment of the year for me. But that was not the case. So look, it's still a movie that I really, really enjoyed. It winds up number 16 on my list. Probably, like, to your point, probably could have expected it to land a little higher, but that's where it lands.
I mean, considering you often rate wrestling movies super
True.
high, and in one case way too high. Just roll my eyes over here.
Actually, well, multiple cases.
I don't know.
I'd look at The Wrestler and change.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, you could knock that down. But The Wrestler was a great movie, though. Don't let your mind fool you. That was still a great movie. There was a scene where Kevin was talking to one of his brothers, and I think it was in the bathroom. I can't remember exactly where it was. And he just had this line where he was like, "I don't even care about the championship. I just want to wrestle with my brothers."
Yes.
And that hit me so hard. Right. That was like all the tragic stuff that happened in that movie. That was the part where I was like, "Oh."
Yeah. So that was at the wedding, wasn't it? Was that at the first?
I can't remember, but it was a nice little scene and like a moment of like, I don't know if it was when his brother was puking.
I think so.
And then he went in and he kind of sat with him.
So this would have been Kevin talking to David.
Yeah.
Because David's the one that goes over to Japan.
Right.
And gets sick and dies. But he was sick before he went to Japan.
But that is a good movie, even though it was only in my honorable mentions. I really have no issues with it.
No.
It just, there's this moment when I'm watching a movie, I get this like feeling, and that's when I know a movie's a 9 out of 10 for me. That's something, there's this feeling I get, I'm like, I love this movie. But I never got that during this movie. I just watched it the whole time. I was like, this is really good, this is really good. Yep, the emotional bits hitting, yep, great acting, the wrestling's cool. Story's going along, doesn't feel boring. But I don't love it.
Yeah.
But I also rated it probably an 8 out of 10, so it's...
Yeah, and that's what I rated it as well.
It's great. I'll say it's a very good movie, I'll say. My number 16 is Dream Scenario.
Oh, okay.
The professor who wants to write a book whose edges are so sanded down that nobody wants to be around him. A great performance from Nicolas Cage. And if you don't know the premise, he just shows up in everyone's dreams, which is a play on that old, I don't know if I want to call it a myth. I guess it's a myth, of This Man. Have you seen This Man?
Yeah.
It was like a marketing ploy of like, everyone's seeing this man in their dreams, but it was just a marketing thing, which, is, by the way, is like, it's deceptive, but it's also really interesting marketing. And he just, as we talked about, he's just standing around doing nothing at first. But then it becomes really vicious, and he starts doing really bad things, and everyone hates him. And I loved that premise, and I loved how the movie kind of dips a little bit into horror, and a little bit into sci-fi, and a little bit in all this stuff, right? And it's not the funniest movie. I didn't laugh a lot, and you know, it's not the most dramatic movie, but it pulls all the pieces together in a really enjoyable way. And honestly, one of the best satires of the year. Because the way that this movie tackled cancel culture, marketing, academia, like, because I'm sort of entrenched a little bit in this kind of stuff because of like the social sciences, and I'm like a hobbyist and have been for quite a few years now, I guess. So I remember the stories, especially of, I can't remember what university it was, but it was a few years ago, of Nicholas something, I can't remember dude, his wife or whatever. Like the students screaming at them and because of something they said that they weren't comfortable with, and you get a lot of that in this movie, and how it tackles how people get pulled over to certain tribes and tribalism in general. And I thought the satire was really excellent here.
As I'm watching it, like I almost kind of wish I didn't know going in that it was a satire commentary on cancel culture, but I knew that going in. So like I'm watching it, and I think for the first little bit, I'm like kind of like I'm watching for that and like expecting that to be like sewed into every little bit of the movie, and when it's not, I'm just like, I don't think this is an effective commentary on this at all. But then it gets to a certain point, I'm like, oh no, there it is. Like, all right, fair enough. That was me being a goober.
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, I don't think there's. I mean, I might change my mind, but I really don't think there's better satire this year than this movie.
No, I think you're very. I think that's really apt. And for me, I think it was the point, and this is actually relatively late in the movie when this comes up, but it's the point when they're having like the support group. And they bring him into the room, and he's in the far corner, and he's just like, look, it's like exposure therapy, right?
Yeah.
And she has him like kind of step a little closer, and then everybody just stands up en masse and leaves. And it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah. Now I remember that scene.
There's where I'm like, okay, now you got me.
He did less than nothing because he is nothing.
Right.
Right. Like, I comment often when I mention Nicolas Cage, and maybe I did in the previous People Awards video, I don't know, about how Nicolas Cage has like a presence. And I don't know if that means anything to anyone. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm not wording it right because it's like, yeah, of course he has a presence. He's standing there. But I don't mean that. I mean, it's like the same way like a wall has a presence. You know, you can run into it, right? Like, air exists, but I can run through it, right? Like, Nicolas Cage is like a wall, sort of. He's there, he's imposing, right? But in this, it's completely the opposite.
Right.
He's like, he's a shriveled up little dude, just kind of standing there like, I just want to, like, I'm a neurologist or whatever it is, like a neuroscientist. He's like, I'm just a neuroscientist who wants to write a book, and I haven't because
I just want my friend to invite me to this really famous dinner party. My number 15 best movie of 2023 is The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
I'm pleased.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased about this.
Where you and I differ a little bit is I actually think Catching Fire is the best of the original four.
I know we disagree on that because I remember us having like it's a disagreement.
A debate, yes.
Like, who cares?
A blood feud over...
Which Hunger Games do you prefer? Like, wow, we like them all.
And I think I like Catching Fire more than the other ones because I find it to be the darkest. And I feel like when The Hunger Games goes darker, it gets better.
Yeah.
And there were actually a lot of elements of that in this too, because the actual games themselves, they're satisfyingly desperate and dark.
Right.
Because that's like, again, it's still an idea that's kind of in its infancy. Certainly relative to what we see like later on in the franchise. So as is tradition, I don't have the anchor weighing me down of I read the book.
Same.
I actually think that's an anchor. Like because most people will say like, well, the book is always better. And it's like, well, I'd always rather read the book than see the movie, or read the book first and then see the movie.
Depends.
It does, but like when you read the book first, you're gonna set yourself up with expectations.
Right.
And you're not making the adaptation.
Right.
It's someone else's adaptation of this thing. That's just me. Almost nobody agrees with me on that, and that's okay. I can play King of the Hill on that now. Like I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So I don't have the anchor here of I read the book, kind of weighing me on that. And as a movie, I just thought this was really exceptionally well done. It introduces a ton of characters that I'm really interested in. I actually hope we get to see more. I don't think we will, but I almost hope that we would get more of these characters, but I feel like this movie does a really good job of setting the stage for what's to come later that we all do know because we all either read those books or watched those movies. I feel like this set the stage for that really, really exceptionally well, And it's still Francis Lawrence at the helm, so it kind of keeps that continuity, I guess, in that sense, where it feels very much like a Hunger Games movie. And if we ever did go back to Pan Am, I would be more than happy to go back to Pan Am. So yeah, the Hunger Games, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is my number 15.
So before I make a few of the points I had written down to make, I will say this movie would be higher on my list as well if it wasn't for part 3 of the movie.
Yes.
This would be a lot higher. So, but how do you feel about my criticism of part 3? And if I need to...
No, I think that was fair. I think they did. I think they sprinted towards the ending.
Yeah.
And I do wish that they would have just just tranquilo, relax,
Could have just easily opened up the sequel. So, hot take, I guess. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the actual games themselves, and part of the reason why I like Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 the most is because they kind of abandon the games. I actually find the games to be one of the least interesting part.
Interesting.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Right? And the games aren't bad. They show a lot of character development and action, and the concept of them is disgusting. And
yes.
You get that when done well, and I don't hate the games, but I like the stuff around it more. If I read a book, I can probably watch the movie. Mm-hmm. And it won't really matter too much. But if I watch a movie, I almost never read the book.
That can definitely, and that's the big hole with that, is it can kill your motivation to read to go to the original source material.
I start picturing the movie characters and everything while I'm reading the book, and I don't know. I don't know if I have a hard and a rule of. That's just kind of the way I work, because I'm thinking of it, and there's plenty of books where when they make a movie, I go, I'm excited for this movie, but very rarely. Fight Club, I watched the movie first, then I read the book. But I pictured Brad Pitt the whole time. That's the thing, right?
Okay.
But I still love the book. But yeah, I don't know. They're different beasts too, though.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
a movie's going to distill the core themes and characters down because it has a limited amount of time. Mm. And that's really all you need to tell an effective story. Now, a book can do a lot of things that can do some things that a movie can't, but you don't gotta I don't like that the book is always better either. Maybe because I'm also a massive movie fan, but I also am a big book fan. I write. I just kind of see the limitations of all the different art forms, and I don't know. I like both, but
I understand people's perspective of the movie is the tip of the iceberg, the book is the rest of the iceberg. I get that. Which is exactly what you're saying. The movie's going to distill down the core kind of themes or whatever. So, I understand when people make that argument. And that's why it's a me personal thing. I've never had an issue not being able to build a character in my own head after, I can read The Lord of the Rings, and as I'm building the Aragorn character in my head, I'm not seeing Viggo Mortensen.
My number 15... is Saw X.
Wow, okay.
Alright. I've been waiting for this moment.
Everybody can get it.
I've been waiting for this moment. This is the best Saw since the first one. I was not expecting to like this. This movie does something that the first Saw doesn't do. It kind of makes you feel bad for Jigsaw. Mm-hmm. Jigsaw is a psychopath. Shouldn't feel bad for him. But... which is why I love the first one, because it's just this guy is insane. You kind of understand his belief system, because it makes some kind of sense in a twisted way, which is why he's such a great villain, but there's no real sympathy for him so much, right?
Right.
So even though I love him as just a cold psychopath, they've gone in this direction for so long that you might as well lean into it. Yeah. And this movie makes you root for Jigsaw. Just straight up. A bunch of people screw him over. So we get revenge. So it loses some of that Saw horror in a sense because of that, and just kind of left with the traps, which were never my favorite part of Saw, actually. Mm. But you know what? I dug it. I dug it quite a bit. Yeah. And in the end, when he's on that board or whatever, and he's getting blood boarded. and the kid's trying to save him, but then he eventually just grabs the lever and he won't let the kid do it, right?
Yeah.
And he just, right? And then he gets up or whatever, and the people who thought they outsmarted him will go into the other room and pull the thing, and then the friggin' alarm goes off, and the Hello Zep theme from like the first movie and probably all the movies, I'm assuming, starts playing, and I felt this love, this joy of Saw that I haven't gotten since the first one.
Hey.
And
I love that.
Yeah, I love that theme. I think that's one of my favorite horror themes. Just ever. That do-noo-noo, noo-noo-noo, noo-noo. But here's the thing, I don't want another Saw. Right? I'm good. Just keep it at Saw X. Like, the creators acknowledged that they killed Jigsaw off way too quick. Yeah, you idiots. Of course you did. And most of the movies have absolutely sucked. It makes me so happy to be a Saw fan again. Because there was a point where this was a tradition. You know? It was every year.
Yeah.
And while I dipped out pretty early, after like the fourth one, I dipped out. But it was still, for those 4 years, it was time for a new Saw.
This is such a parallel for me with Paranormal Activity.
Right.
Because it was like, it's the event, here's this year's Paranormal Activity, and I pieced out of that right around the same time you did with Saw, right around number 4.
Yeah. This desire to paint Jigsaw some kind of hero is really weird, but at the same time, you know, lean into it, I guess.
My number 14, best movie of 2023 is going to be a quick one. It's one that you have already mentioned. It's Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. And interestingly enough, of all the movies that explore AI as a concept, Mission Impossible might be the most interesting one. Yeah. This is the one thing storytelling-wise that I think this movie does really, really, really well, is it's at least a bit of an interesting take on the AI becomes sentient trope.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a trope, but we've discussed here before, tropes are not always bad things. Tropes are sometimes tropes for a reason. And this is one of those ones that I think actually turns out fairly well. I'm super excited for part 2. I love the additional cast of characters, new and old, that this movie brings in. I'm super excited for the second one, assuming that we still wind up getting the same movie that hopefully we were going to get before. I genuinely cannot wait for the second one, and I had a ton of fun with Dead Reckoning Part 1, and it just continues this like upwards trajectory of the latter half of the Mission Impossible films. But I'm with you. When this next one is over, I'm good.
Yeah. I think I saw people criticizing the villain being AI and stuff, but I'm with you. I thought it was fine. It's scary.
It is. It is. I guess I can get people criticizing the general idea of AI as the enemy, especially if it's like the fucking crypto bros and stuff like that. But like, I don't know. I thought they did it fairly well here. So
me too. I agree.
Yeah, no criticisms on that front.
My number 14 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Ooh.
And I don't know, I guess it's just because there's movies I prefer more. There's nothing to criticize this movie for.
No.
And I considered putting Saw above it, but I think that's probably just because the ending of Saw got me so much that I want to rate it higher than I should, but I had to be honest and be like, no. Spider-Man is a better movie. It is. It's a better movie. It doesn't have the ending that Saw has for me, but it is a better movie. I mean, the animation's still brilliant.
Yeah.
Some of the audio mixing is weird, though. Like, the music's really loud. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have made that choice, but whatever. Story's still interesting. The second part's going to be bonkers. I guess I'm not quite as high in these movies as a lot of other people, but I certainly don't hate these movies. No. And I'm excited for the next part, for sure.
What's super interesting about the audio is I thought, because I saw this movie in theaters twice, because I saw it and then somebody else wanted to go see it. I was like, sure, I'll go see that again. So I thought the first time that I saw it that there was something wrong with the speakers.
Yeah.
In the theater, right? because like it's very quiet in the beginning, and I'm like,
yeah, it is.
Who mixed this? Like, this is really interesting. I was like, gosh, this is so good. And eventually it kind of
it does. But it really wants it to be musical at the beginning, especially, right. So the music kind of dominates the, talk.
Yeah. But then I saw it a second time in a different theater, and it was the same. And I'm like, oh, so this was an intentional choice. I'm like, I don't like that quite so much.
Not the choice I would have made, but ultimately, though, it's funny, though, because it kind of tries to accomplish the same thing that there's, the genre black metal. Mm-hmm. There's this thing within that genre, especially of like old black metal stuff, where you bury the vocals because you're trying to make the vocals just kind of another instrument. I know vocals are technically an instrument, but another instrument to just kind of blend in with the tone and the atmosphere. So like the vocals aren't high in the mix. The screams are just kind of blending in with the guitar and the drums, right? And that's what this movie kind of felt like. That's not my favorite thing about black metal. It's not my favorite thing about the Spider-Man movie. I managed to throw in black metal talking about Spider-Man. Only at the Justin and Tyler Movie Awards.
Black metal Spider-Man? Oh. Hell
yeah, let's bring... Oh, he's going to come in with corpse paint.
It's the multiverse. It can happen.
Yeah, there's one out there. Although also, I didn't realize, and it's my fault, that there was already a sequel planned. So when it was like an abrupt ending, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Because I was watching it, I was like, you guys gotta wrap this up. Like, this story, because, like, we're going. I don't have a watch, but I'm, like, looking, and I'm just like, I don't, what? Oh, okay, there's a sequel.
Yeah.
I get it.
No, and I knew that going in, and I forgot. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. There's another one.
Yeah.
My lucky number 13, best movie of 2023, that's a joke for us from off camera, is Air. I'll be fairly quick about this because I've talked about this movie at the mid-years, and I talked about it a couple of times. So Air is the story of Sonny Vaccaro, who was a shoe salesman for Nike, and his recruitment of Michael Jordan to Nike. And look, it's one of those, like, this was the movie from this year that I think, like, whenever I'm kind of sitting around and I think I need, like, a motivational little, like, shot in the arm, or I just need, like, a pump up, I'll think of this movie, weirdly enough. Mm-hmm. Everybody that's in this movie more than holds their weight with what's a really, really snappy screenplay. Yeah. This is the 20th joint between Affleck and Damon working together.
No, really?
I went back. It's the 20th time, and it's so, like, I mean, obviously you can tell just the ease of chemistry of them performing off of each other. And, like, I didn't care about any of this beforehand, right? Like, because people have criticized this movie as it's just an ad for Nike. And, okay, I get that. But, like, I didn't care about Air Jordan. I didn't care about the story of Nike. I didn't care about Phil Knight. I didn't care about any of this stuff. And then I watched this movie, and I'm like, all of a sudden, this movie made me care about all of this. And it's put together so well. And yeah, sure, it's a dramatized version of the story. But, like, the story of Michael Jordan's financials with Nike should not be as interesting as it is in real life.
Yeah.
But it's super interesting. And again, I didn't care about any of these things, and the movie made me care about them. And it's very, very, very well put together. So that's why it's number 13 on my list this year. Air, and it's stuck with me all year long.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the talent involved in this, I wouldn't have watched it.
Yeah.
But unlike a movie like Wonka, even not caring about the premise, I really enjoyed this. I think I gave it an 8 out of 10. Nothing I hate about this. Like you said, it's very snappy. A movie like that has to be snappy.
Has to be. Oh yeah. You're not gonna. Yeah. Especially with the talent that they have in the movie. Like, you can't have a movie with Affleck and Damon and Viola Davis and whatever. And it has to go. It has to be like this. And luckily it was.
This movie could have went so wrong.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
My number 13 is Ballerina, not to be confused with the upcoming John Wick Ana de Armas spinoff.
Oh, okay.
There's a different ballerina in town, and honestly, this gives the John Wick spinoff a lot to, like, a high standard to, like, clear.
Right.
High bar to clear. A South Korean action movie. There's a bunch of South Korean movies. Because, you know what? South Korea has probably the second best film industry on the planet. I just really... whatever it is, I don't know if it's just the movies I'm seeing. And I'm not seeing a ton of movies. Like, don't get me wrong. Maybe if I watched 50 South Korean movies, I wouldn't say that. But it's just, when I look for best South Korean movies, the list, I go, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. This movie, just an over-the-top action movie, starts off with a bang. This chick, the main character, walks into a convenience store. It's getting robbed.
Okay.
And she, as they're like there at the counter and they're like threatening the clerk or whatever, she walks up and she slams something down on the table and she's like, I want to pay for this. And then it's like, takes her this big wad of money and like she's like, is there any change? And of course the criminal was like, ooh. No, and she just annihilates them with like a canned good too.
Right.
Like she has a canned good at one point. She's blocking things and stuff and hitting them with a canned good, and I'm like instantly in. This is it.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of really, really, really good action, and the director does some really cool things. Just different things. There's a scene where she gets on a motorcycle to drive away. Instead of just showing the motorcycle and her driving away, I think the director's a he. I can't remember exactly who it is. He has the screen with the ground and then the motorcycle and there's like a big puddle and you can see a reflection in it. And it's just
cool.
it's just kind of a nice touch.
Yeah,
right.
I like
and she
that.
That's really cool. And there's like lots of scenes like that, or just moments of she has a gun to someone's head and he's like F off or whatever, and instead of just shooting them, like takes a piece of glass, puts it in his mouth, and starts punching it. It's like it's just a little thing. It's what certain other like action movies just do well. Like if you're just standing there going boom, 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 which I've criticized a few times, you're probably a bad action movie.
Right.
Or at least very generic. So then you get something like this where she's using canned goods and she's like, I'm blocking stuff. And I guess there's not a ton to say about it. It's just, I'm into these types of movies a lot, and South Korea seems to have really delivered on this front.
Nice.
And so I really recommend anybody go see Ballerina. And then also watch the Anna de Armas one that comes out next year, because I certainly am.
My number 12 best movie of 2023 is A Man Called Otto, and we've talked about that in the mid-years, and we've talked about it a little earlier in this show, so I'm not going to take up a ton of time. However, a couple things that I wanted to point out. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes adaptations of like very beloved properties can sometimes be, a big letdown. I thought A Man Called Otto was fantastic and absolutely stands shoulder to shoulder with the source material, which it's all you can ever ask for from an adaptation. Tom Hanks crafting this like sympathetic heel. It's the second time I've used that in these awards. The sympathetic heel of Otto, and he did so masterfully, and he is such a genius as a performer and as like a person very clearly contributing to other parts of the movie behind the scenes, because you can just tell in Tom Hanks movies that like, oh, this element is the same, this element's very simple, what's the common factor? It's Tom Hanks movies, so you know that he's like contributing little things here and there. So Mark Forster was the director of this, and I think it's probably his best work since Stranger Than Fiction. Certainly the best that I've seen since Stranger Than Fiction.
Movie.
Stranger Than Fiction? Yeah, absolutely. I think this is like some of the best work of his whole career after. In fact, he was another guy that I could have chosen for like Back on the Map.
Yeah.
I could have popped Mark Forster on there for sure. But yeah, A Man Called Otto, it's my number 12. It's been a highly ranked, like Air, a highly ranked movie for me for the entirety of this year.
I'm glad you're showing us so much love. I don't have it on my list, but I did enjoy it. My number 12 is a cheater pick, Brother. A Canadian drama, which I did tell you about earlier in the year.
Okay.
It's a drama. It takes place in Toronto in the 90s. It's about a black family.
Oh, yes, yeah.
This, instead of bashing us with its message, it tells it through deep characters and organic interactions. The authenticity of the central family, obviously the brothers, but also their mother, had me invested. It's slow, never boring, earns its emotional payoff. The dialogue feels real. The performances are really good. I actually consider both brothers for best actors. There's probably a better way to tie the film up. That's a minor dig at a movie that I find outstanding otherwise. There's social commentary in this, obviously about race, but it was also in the 90s, so it's like it's different.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it wasn't heavy-handed. It was just, this is a thing. Okay, this is our interactions with cops or whatever. Okay, but it wasn't like blah 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 blah. And even the way it handles things like masculinity, which I'll get back to, or like the one brother, I think it's the older brother, is gay, and when it's revealed, it's just subtle. It just exists, and it's powerful.
Yeah.
Right. It's just you find out, oh, he's gay. Okay. Right. Great. Right. And that doesn't diminish it. It's just, yeah. Like the older brother, who's kind of a criminal, kind of like a bit, right? Trying to protect his little brother, which, you know, like I like the brother stuff, as I mentioned.
Yes.
But he's trying so hard to be tough that I can't remember his name. I think his little brother's name is Michael, but I might be screwing that up now. There's a scene where they're watching the news and the mom's not there. And there's two criminals on the loose, and so the big brother goes over and puts like a chair by the door to like try to keep it so the criminals can't come in. And then when questioned about why he did it, he's like, Michael was scared. But really, as it kind of reveals itself through the interactions that he has with his mom, the big brother, you find out that no, he's scared. Right. He just doesn't want to show it. Like, I actually get a little bit emotional talking about just the way that this movie you just watch. It's like, we're just watching people live. And that's beautiful. Nice. This actually was a year, I think, of, like, some really good dramas. I mean, you just talked about one, like, which was totally deserving. But this is one of my favorite dramas of the year. And as I kind of reflect on it, like, months and months after, I'm like, God damn, like, this could be higher, too, because this movie's really beautiful.
I remembered when the trailers for this was playing too. I believe they were attached to BlackBerry.
That might be it.
So they were like playing at the time when BlackBerry was in theaters. And I remember seeing, it was early in the year, it was March or April. I remember seeing and taking note of that, but I never wound up getting to see it. But then as soon as you started describing it, I was like, oh yeah, that one that I really wanted to see, it didn't get around to.
I believe I rented it off iTunes.
Oh, okay.
Because occasionally I'll rent movies on iTunes.
Yeah.
Because somehow sometimes they just have these movies. I'm like, oh look, can't find it anywhere else, but there it is on iTunes, so I'll rent it. And I'm glad I did, because I'm glad I supported it.
Time for the final picks of this video, the number 11 best movie of 2023, and my number 11 is Creed 3. So I've talked about Creed 3 a bunch already, how it's probably, for me, the best boxing cinematography I think maybe I've ever seen in the Dame versus Creed fight. Like, it's just next level stuff going on there, and using the cinematography at times to tell the story. Like, I'll never forget the portion of the fight where, like, I think it's Creed's throwing a punch, and as the punch lands, it's like they get transported into another universe. Like, all the people leave, there's no sound except for the two of them in the ring. Right. And they're just going as if no one else is there. And then it comes back, and it's back to the big, like, MGM Grand or whatever, and I was like, oh my god, this is fantastic. Michael B. Jordan, you're a genius. And not only, obviously, is Michael B. Jordan an exceptionally talented actor, which he is, he shows in this movie the quality of the directorial chops that he is developing as well, which is incredible. And as I mentioned, Jonathan Majors, one of the can't-miss performances of the year. So, Creed 3, my number 11 best movie of 2023. My first 85. Nice. So my first 8.5 out of 10 on the list.
Couple points. We're on his drama kick because you know, sports drama, so there's a little bit of action in it, but you know it's still essentially a drama. 2, that scene you described, I hate that scene.
Oh, do you?
You know why? You don't remember. Good. Years ago, I wrote a short story where that.
Oh, that's right.
Now I can't write it.
He stole your idea.
But at the same time, you just unintentionally called me a genius.
Yeah.
It's on film.
There you go.
No, that scene is beautiful. That scene is, I mean, not just because I wrote a short story like that. No, that scene, like, I watched that, right? And I'm like, oh, so that's how it would look. No, it's a great scene, in all seriousness.
And, like, the sequence on the beach, I think, after Dame...
He wins the championship.
After Dame wins the title. And they're having that sequence on the beach, and it's one of the trailer moments, but it's like, it's Dane talking, and he's like, imagine spending all the time in prison that I did watching someone else live your life. And I'm like, oh my God, that's such a killer line. And again, his performance is so immaculate in this movie. It's my number 11, and it's just as good in retrospect as it was at the time.
I agree. To close the video, my number 11 is Past Lives.
Oh.
The drama train keeps on rolling on.
Ain't no getting off of this train we're on.
He talked really elegantly about it, so I'm just gonna read my critique, and then there's like maybe 1 or 2 points I'm gonna make. Mm-hmm. Artful and tasteful directing serves the narrative and characters. The performances are authentic without a poorly spoken word, but I wouldn't call them best of the year. Although you called one of them best of the year. Nominees or anything, at least individually, but the two main characters do have a great chemistry together.
Yes.
So that should be considered, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's all put together well, but it's really the story that stands above. It's heartbreaking but real, doesn't need to fall into hysterics to tell an emotional story. You've talked about some of these moments. You had said about Marcel the Shell with shoes on that you didn't realize that it was behind you, like, digging it. You know, I can't remember how you worded it. That was this movie for me. I knew I liked it. I knew I liked it. And you knew you liked Marcel, but then when certain scenes happen, I'm just like, oh.
Yeah.
And then after the movie, I kind of laid there with Castle just thinking about the movie. And I don't do that with a lot of movies. I watch a movie, I go, that's really good. And then I kind of move on with my life most of the time. But this, I kind of just laid there with the bun, and I was like petting him, and I'm like, quite. It's on every best of the year list for good reason.
Yeah.
That's it. I guess this is the last we talk about Past Lives this year, but it's great.
Yeah, 100%.
Could have easily been top 10 for me, but again, so many movies.
And I think this was Seline Song's debut.
Oh, that's a killer.
Like, I don't think she's... It's incredible, because what an achievement for your first film, if that's the case. But if it's also the case, you're just like... Yeah. Now you're going to fall into that, like, will you ever make a movie this good ever again?
Surprise, you're probably not. And if you do, if you keep making movies like this, you'll be one of the best directors working today. This movie was excellent.
There you have it, folks. Movies number 20 all the way up to number 11, the second of our 3-part top 30 best movies of 2023. And now it's time for the top 10 that will be in the next video coming up. It's the 10 best movies of the year from this guy and from this guy, and we can't wait to share them with you.